I call her Alicent the Seductress. So here's my thing with Alicent. I think Alicent, I said it earlier, she's an idealist and she's self-righteous. And she doesn't want to do what it actually takes to achieve her goals. She doesn't want to kill Rhaenyra, but her sparing Rhaenyra's life is going to kill so many people in the realm. So she chose to spare the life of her best friend growing up, her childhood best friend, because of that closeness in that relationship, not understanding how everybody else is going to die because of this choice. Yes, ultimately, Otto Hightower's decision would have been the smartest, most efficient way for it to happen. But there would be no story if that happened, right? If Rhaenys killed all of them there and then, there would be no story. So the writers just have to make it dramatic for us to keep watching. But when it comes to Alicent is a seductress. And she understands the power that she possesses. I'm going to play this scene or this moment for you just to really understand what I'm saying.
Everything you feel for me as your queen.
I will not fail you.
The very fate of the Seven Kingdoms depends on it. Everything you feel for me as your queen.
I will not fail you.
Okay, so in this scene, she's asking Sir Criston Cole to find her son Aegon and bring him to her. And if you notice in that moment, she, makes this request. Then she takes a step closer, looks into his eyes with her big doughy eyes, whispers a little bit lower and says, everything you feel for me. It's an indication that they have some sort of an intimate relationship. Now, I think Alicent is too high and mighty for it to be a sexual relationship. Who knows? But that is the closest man to her. And I think it's very interesting and hypocritical, obviously, if she were to have this intimate, close relationship with Sir Criston Cole, who had the same relationship with Rhaenyra, and that is actually what sent her on this spiral against Rhaenyra in the first place, because of this Criston Cole. So it wouldn't be surprising that they have this intimate, close relationship. But ultimately, I think Alicent is too high and mighty to actually do anything with him. This is what I think, but who knows what they're really doing, right? So it seems as though she has this, but it seems, he has this utter devotion to her and this utter love for her. I'll do anything for my queen. I think it's obvious that he's in love with her. Now, I think she's also in love with her now. Sorry, I think she's also in love with him. Whether she's acted on it, I am unsure, but I do see in the future, there's going to be some sort of intimate relationship with the two of them. But in her saying, everything that you feel for me, that is a very unprofessional comment to make. Everything they feel for me, ... as your queen. So I think Alicent is using her power as a seductress to get what she wants from these men that are extremely devoted to her. Because I think that devotion, it's going to cost you. Men are visual beings, and it doesn't make sense that for all these years, he's just going to be devoted to her without there being any sort of sexual desire. I mean, it's possible, but there must have been something, even if it wasn't mutual, there must have been something on his part. Now, the part that really confirmed this to me was her relationship with, what's his name? Varys Strong, and his sort of obsession and devotion with her. We saw, let me even play the moment. Is it here? Okay, just before I go into that, I just want to bring up another point about Alicent being an idealist. And it's also seen in this moment also here when she asks, just to prove that she's an idealist, she asks she asked them to find Aegon. And he's like, I'm going to go with her. Obviously, as a mother, she's not going to want both of her sons out in the wild. Then what's her claim to the throne when both of her sons might potentially die? So she's like, no, I wouldn't want you to go. But then he then says, it's not only, let me play it. Let me let him say it.
Aemond, if anything has happened.
Cole leaves me, Mother. So Eric isn't the only one who knows Aegon's doings.
Okay. So yeah, they recognize this is the beginning of the fight or the hunt for Aegon. So Criston Cole comes into the room and says Eric has gone to find him. She acknowledges that Eric knows how to find him. He has the advantage because Eric is actually his Kingsguard or his protector. So he knows how to find him. So damn, she can see that her father is winning in this race. But obviously her son knows him as well. So, but she doesn't want to risk her other son, but she wants Aegon. I just think this is another example of how she's an idealist, but she doesn't want to make the sacrifices that it takes to get what she wants. But everybody else around her understands what is required and are willing to take those risks. And that's where her devotion or her reliance on men stems from, because they not only defy what she says, but they do what it takes and they are devoted to her. So as much as, yes, she's devoted to her father and her son, especially in his pursuit to be king, she has these other men that service her and her needs. But moving into the part about her being a seductress, and I'm not saying it in a way like she's scandalous or anything, but it seems as though Larys, let me find the scene. Larys has this foot fetish. Oh, and just even before the scene, her father addresses her, strange connection with Larys, or just that he was in your chambers, like everybody is addressing this man's obsession with her. So they're kind of like insinuating there might be something going on there. So he comes into this room and we see that he has this like bad foot. Obviously he has a walking stick. We've seen it all throughout. But at the same time, I think it's interesting how he has a bad foot and also he has this foot fetish. So he has this bad foot and he has this foot fetish. So it's clear that for years, so maybe there's something there, like maybe there's something there. He has this foot fetish and he has a bad foot. Interesting stuff. But I think what has even become more clear in this moment is that if you remember in the episode, I want to say around episode 4 or something, when he killed his father for her, and he expected to get something in return. I think for me, I thought he was just looking to maybe become her hand in the future if Aegon becomes king. I thought he wanted some sort of political position, maybe in a small council's meeting, some sort of position like that. But it seems that it was actually a sexual wish that he had of her. He wanted something sexual from her, which, she's too honorable of a woman to go through with it and have sex with him. Also, I don't think she's attracted to him. But I think even worse, her husband, look at the state of her husband. So she's not unused to servicing the needs of creepy and unattractive men. So what is the worst? If she just shows him her feet, he jacks off to it. Well, okay, whatever. Sure, it's kind of gross. We can see that it disgusts her. Even in this moment where he's explaining things and he's withholding information from her because he wants to see her bare feet, or he wants to see more of her body. And so she plays into what he requests, because ultimately when it comes down to it, she's not exactly having sex with him or anything, but she's just sort of using her sexuality or her femininity to attract him. And I think it's interesting. You also have to understand, as the queen, especially the religious queen that she is, she dresses quite modestly. So seeing the feet of the queen, nobody gets to see the feet of the queen, right? So her showing him her bare feet, that's actually quite revealing for the times that they're in. Another thing is, So not only did Otto point this out, that, he was, I can't remember the exact quote, but he basically points out that that Larys is sort of like, he's a little close to you, but also in around the funeral in episode, I think it was, I can't remember the episode, but the Valerian funeral, right? Criston Cole noticed that he was staring at her for the whole event. And that's also an indicator that he had this obsession with her. And when you really think about it, right, he's quite a strange character, because he is the Lord of Harrenhal. He's the Lord of Harrenhal. He could go to Harrenhal, even though it's burnt, but it could be, it's always been an issue with Harrenhal. So he could actually go to Harrenhal, be the Lord of Harrenhal, get all the women in Harrenhal that he wants, and live his life as a lord and enjoy himself. But because of his obsession with the queen, he stays by her side. So it's like this infatuation, this creepy obsession and love for her. And he's almost, so it's interesting to me how he chooses the life of an OnlyFans incel, that subscribes to an OnlyFans account, like an incel groupie for an OnlyFans person, instead of him to actually just go and live out his, like, he could just go, even in King's Landing, he could go to Flea Bottom, he could get all the women he wants. He's rich, he's a lord, but he chooses not to do that. He chooses to stay on the sidelines near the queen. So it makes me question, he has to have some agenda beyond, okay, yes, he's in love with her, that's one of the things, but I think it's something about his proximity to power and his need to really get close enough to her, potentially becoming a hand himself, the hand of the queen, the hand of the king, or whatever it is that he needs. And I think it's very interesting watching how Alicent's people are so devoted to Alicent. They're so devoted to her, obviously, yes, because of her position as queen, or the former queen, but also she's young, she's pretty, and all these things. So it's a very interesting dynamic there. So what I found interesting and kind of creepy was Alicent, at the end of that scene, Alicent kind of accepts that, he's perverted, he's kind of gross, and she puts her feet up and she looks away because she doesn't even want to see him jacking off to her, but she knows he's doing it. She's grossed out by it, but it's like, as much as I said she's an idealist and she doesn't want to do what it takes to get what she wants, she does understand this is the most, it's almost like this is the most that she will do. She won't go through with actually having sex with him because that's out of order for her. It's out of her, religious beliefs, especially to cheat on her husband. At least that would have been her excuse to get away from having sex with him in the first place. And mother bastard children and all of that stuff. So she wouldn't even want to entertain that then. But I think now he sees a real window, an opportunity to potentially have some sort of engagement with her. But either way, I think for her, it's almost as though now that the king has died, he has more leverage to request more from her. He has more leverage to request actual sex from her. So we're going to see if he uses that as a tool to manipulate her and to force her to have sex with him in the future. And if she gives in, how willing or how desperate will she be that she will actually give in to that? Because even now we can see she's disgusted, but she's sort of like doing it for the survival of her house and her children and her family. She'll just get away with, she'll just let him do it. But ultimately, what is it going to look like when he actually wants to have sex with her? And is she going to comply then? So very interesting relationship dynamic between the two of them. And I guess we've seen what has been brewing all these years. But also it's another confirmation that Criston also has this sort of attraction and devotion to her, is him even noticing that Larys was staring at her all throughout. And obviously her father also has an admiration for her, so he would notice also.